So when it gets crazy, you just have to calm down. You just have to observe and just sit back and watch, and then make action. Then decide what to do. The most important word of your letter is the first word. The second most important letter is the second word. And each word has to get the person to want to read the next word. So rule number one is your advertising has to produce results. You have to hold your advertising accountable. Marketing and advertising is the one thing you give up last, not first. You only focus on standards. You're only going to be top down, make more calls. We have high standards, do more, work harder. When oftentimes they just need better standardization.
Welcome back to the Reside Platform podcast. I'm your host, Nick McLean, and today we're sharing with you a recent interview I did with Joshua Smith on the GSD Mode Podcast. This is one of the most popular podcasts in the entire real estate industry with over 100,000 downloads every single week. I wanted to share this podcast with you because I share stories and principles that I know are going to make a major impact on your business, your team, your brokerage. It goes over my history of going from a commercial airline pilot to a brand new agent and our progression to 20% market share. There's times we sell 1 out of every 5 homes in our marketplace, and I dive into marketing principles, lead generating principles, conversion techniques, including my exact email framework that I used to write to my database 265 times last year that produced over 70 transactions. You're not going to miss that. Plus, we dive into stories I've never told. Stories about leadership, growing the teams, mistakes that I wish I could have changed in the past if I could do it over again. And if I were to start over, how would I do it differently? If I went back into time and I could tell myself 2 things, what would I tell myself? So stay tuned. You're going to love this wide-ranging conversation with Joshua Smith and I'm being interviewed, Nick McLean. You're going to love it. Share it with anyone you think will get an impact from it, and we'll see you soon.
All right. What's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview where every single week we interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate professionals, and straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. And today, guys, we had another epic, amazing special guest on just to give some quick context about our guest today. So before he got into the real estate industry, he's a former firefighter and mountain bike racer, turned real estate company owner, got started in the industry around 2012. His team now is selling over 500 homes yearly in a small town with under 100,000 people, where they have over 20% overall market share. In addition to that, best-selling author, co-owner of Reside, real estate coach, and more, which we'll get into and unpack all of that, but really stoked and honored to have Nick McLean on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
I'm so excited to be on this podcast. Been a loyal listener for years, student of the industry, the game, funnel vision, not just tunnel vision, but you're definitely a podcast that we tune into a lot.
Yeah, no, it means a lot, man. It means a lot. And we kind of run in the same circles, dude. It's a small industry. And you know, I've been watching you from afar and seeing your success. I've heard so many amazing things about you, dude. So just, really stoked and honored to have you here, man. And excited to get into this, man. So if we rewind the clocks, so you're a fighter. I think that you mentioned, I saw that you work for Boeing, mountain bike racer.
Boeing 747 pilot.
Okay, yep.
That's the big, piece de resistance. That's the pinnacle of my late 20s.
Okay, yep. Hell yeah, dude. So why real estate? Because it sounded like you had a lot of shit going on. Like, what led you into this industry?
Yeah, so I'm very analytical. I love math, love science, very studious, but also I was an athlete and I love competition. I was the kid that would get in trouble at school for being too rough. Like, my mom's getting a call from the principal, you need to do something about your son. And she's like, what's he doing? What's he doing wrong? Well, he's not doing anything wrong. He's just trying really hard at everything. And it's making other people uncomfortable. That was kind of my early adolescence, was like, Nick, you need to calm down, slow down. Not everyone wants to be as competitive as you, but I just have this inner need and fire to be competitive. And so part of that competitiveness was an outlet after sports into adventure. I was just called to adventure. I grew up in a small town of 3,000 people, Cle Elum, Washington. founded by coal miners, railroads. My grandfather was a railroad conductor. My ancestors were in the coal mines. And so I have this like blue collar spirit, hard work spirit, grit spirit, I think is in me. And I would encourage anyone to learn about their past and their ancestors because it's inspiring as hell. They made it. You are the product of millions of years of survivors. Not one person in your lineage did not make it to the age of childbirth. Not one. It's pretty inspiring to me. So to take this further is that I became a wildland firefighter in college. It's like, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to fight fire. It's going to be so cool. And it was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had because it was 20 people working together for a common goal and mission outdoors. It was spiritual. It was synchronistic. It taught me a lot about leadership and working together. And I just wanted more of that. So from there, I became a commercial airline pilot and went to Florida. I wanted to be a pilot because I'm looking for this like group think in terms of we're all working together. And there's something magical. Have you ever had that experience? I was doing a talk one time on stage at one of Cheplak's event, and somebody in the stands was a former SWAT. He was part of SWAT. And he came up to me right after stage and he goes, you talking about your experience as a firefighter, your experience as an airline pilot, and that synergy is a cliche word that was used in Fortune 500 companies, but there's something about this selflessness where you're just in it and you're doing what you were trained to do for the person next to you that is so addicting. And I think I was never in the military, but I'm fascinated by the people that go into the military and then there's a big hole missing in their life. And that's that doing things for others, but together and falling back on your training. So, as an airline pilot, I lost my job because the airline didn't make money. Funny thought, businesses need to have a profit.
Yeah.
To sustain. So I got into real estate in 2008 and I fell back on real estate because I could live anywhere in the world as a Boeing 747 airline pilot, anywhere in the world. My wife got a job at the high school, so we moved to Wenatchee, Washington, and we didn't want to move. And as a pilot, you got to move. But I was determined to do real estate, not solo. Like from day one, I knew I wasn't going to do this solo. Now I was going to get really skillful and produce, be very, very competitive. But after 4 years of being very, very competitive and very, very successful through lots of just trial and error and hard work, I was like, I got to start a team. I got to build a company. And I'm going to do it like I'm going to build my company just like the airline that I never had. So I built my brokerage under the same framework that I learned how to build an airline with, from training to everything.
Yep. No, I love it, man. I'm excited to unpack that. So, okay. So you start in 2008 and I misquoted there. I put that you started in 2012, but that sounds like when you started.
That was my team. That was when I started my team.
Okay. So let's talk about, cause dude, 2008, man. I mean, I you and I both been in the game a long time. I got it in 2005, 2008 was a funky time, so let's talk about that, dude. Cause you jumped in the start of the worst housing market crash in United States recorded history. So what was that, first year or two like kind of before team? What was it like getting that start during that time?
It was interesting because you don't know what you don't know. And the law of primacy falls in. How you learn something to begin with sticks with you the longest. Outside of recency. Recency is the last thing you learn is going to stay with you. Your last impression is your lasting impression. But the primacy, you got to be very, very cognizant of primacy. What was it like when you started? Because you may need to be retrained, but you also have to break down some of your beliefs that were forged based on our experiences. See, this. We forecast the future based on our past because that's all we have to go off of. We might get some more information to figure out what's going on in the future, but we base it on our past. And so a lot of real estate agents now that have gone into the industry, and we'll get to this, are struggling because their law of primacy was a lot different than the law of primacy we experienced. And you experienced 2005 and 2008. So that was a shocker. right? Because 2005 was a lot different than 2008. I got in March of 2008, and I remember I had $6,800 in my bank account. $6,800. I sold my Volvo. I had a 1996 red Volvo 850T in Florida as an airline pilot. It was my commuter car. But I'm laid off now. I can't afford that car. I sold it and bought a $100 car off my father-in-law, a 1984 Subaru GL wagon, spray painted green. It was his orchard car. See, I live in the apple capital of the world. So it was the car they would use to go in between orchards. That was my car for real estate. But hey, I sold my car for $6,800. I spent $100, so I had $6,700 left over, and I needed to make that work. Well, I didn't make any money. I didn't make any sales. I made my first sale in August of that year, and that right around the time the complete collapse happened, like the complete baking failure, everything imploded. In my multiple listing service, there were 0 sales between November of 2008 and March of 2009. 0 recorded sales. Right? 0. Like, it's not that I'm bad. It's nobody's doing it.
Yeah, just no,
that's at crazy. All. So what was I going to do at that point? Right? I know I wasn't going to give up. So I couldn't afford to drive my 84 Super GL. So I parked it and I got a bus pass. And I took the bus to the office every single day. Every single day I went to work. That's it. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I didn't question it at all. I just knew what I was going to do today was go to the work and I'd figure out a way. And so started building websites, lead generating, following my mentor around. And what I noticed that was really interesting is all of the people who had experienced good times were freaking out. They didn't know what to do, right? The avoidance was getting in there. They were fleeing. They were pretending it was fine and everything would change as soon as we got a new president. I remember hearing them, oh, if we can only get a new president, we're going to be fine. Oh, really? Okay. Well, it took like 4 years for it to really rebound if you look at it, right? Before it bottomed out. So what I kept hearing from people, because I was so optimistic and so hardworking and prospecting and lead generating, is, wow, you're different than the other agents. You're different. You're optimistic. You're calling me. You're making deals happen. You're interested in investments. You're interested in bank properties. You seem to have a pulse on this. And they gravitate to hustling. They do. People gravitate to deal makers. That's what I learned. And I never forgot that. And they would all tell me, man, when the market's good, you're going to do great. I'm like, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But I didn't care about that. And so I think the moral of the story is, right, that people want you to be hustling. They want to see that proactive edge. And you stand out like a sore thumb in real estate. The barrier to entry is so low that in order to be great, you just have to be better than crap. Yeah. Like if you can just be better than terrible, you're probably going to be in the top 20%.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take it that step further because I wanted to go to the upper echelon of eliteness, but I just didn't know where to go from there. But I knew I wasn't going to be poor at the process. The average agent returns phone calls 24 hours later. I would return every single phone call at the end of every single day. I haven't in 10 years that I had called back every missed number for 10 years straight. There's never been one missed call that I don't call back.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. So with that, dude, all right. So you just get laid off from the airlines. You jump over here. Things aren't going maybe to plan. The market falls off of a cliff. How did you not get, let it beat you down mentally where you're like, shit, man, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? You mentioned that you stayed optimistic, but to have kind of both of these things back to back, it probably would break a lot of people mentally. Like, what did you do to stay mentally strong and stay persistent and keep yourself having that grit?
Okay. So as a commercial airline pilot, and everyone here, I can teach to fly. I guarantee it. You give me 15 minutes, I will teach you to take off an airplane. I can get you in a 747 and you can take it off safely, period. Now, can you land it? That's another story. Okay. And you wouldn't take off on your own unless I taught you how to land, because that would be suicide. But let me talk to you about emergencies. So in airlines, there's normal procedures, there's abnormal procedures, and then there's emergencies. Okay. Now, you have to master the normal procedures before we even touch abnormal. Like, you have to be able to fly straight level, climb, descend, right? Put the landing gear there, land, right? Before we're going to try to do a crosswind landing would be an abnormal landing configuration, right? And an emergency landing would be a landing in which it's crosswind and you have an engine flamed out and you're running on one engine on a two engine. Does that make sense? That's an emergency. Yep. And I think what happens in real estate is we train our agents on like these obscure scenarios based on emergencies that have happened in our past, right? Like, well, let me tell you about that one deal that went sideways and I fixed it, or this one crazy seller I had, or this crazy buyer. And let me show you how to overcome that objection to get it to close, right? So we handle, how do you handle these emergency procedures, right? And I'll take it back to how I handle myself is this. Number one, train yourself on normal procedures first, and then get to abnormal. Train your agents on normal and get proficient at that before you go abnormal and before you go objection. So don't worry about objection handlers and how to overcome the seller that wants you to reduce their commission, or how do you handle it when you're competing against 4 other agents and the 800-pound gorilla in your marketplace. Like, that's crazy scenario. Like, master the listing presentation in which you're not competing at all. It's normal. And you're the only one that can screw it up. So as a commercial airline pilot, the reason I studied airline crashes, that's what they make you study this. They study airline, and you look at the case studies. And the number one reason for an airline crash, I think you'll probably know it, right? What's the number one reason? Is it because the airline failed, that the landing gear wouldn't come down, the engine flamed out, there was a explosive decompression? Or was it human error? What do you think? Which one is it? Which one's more likely, human error or a Boeing failure, mechanical failure?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I'm going to guess human error.
Of course. Like, the reason we don't succeed is because of our errors. You pull, right, our errors. So let me take you to emergencies. The reason I'm more likely to crash or fail as an airline pilot is my error, not an emergency. It may be an emergency that I caused. So as a real estate agent, I just don't cause any emergencies, right? And when there's a lot of things outside of my control as an emergency, the first thing you do as an airline pilot when a true emergency takes place, right? Chaos. First thing you do, don't do anything. Because if you intervene, you're likely to make it worse. So this is what I've learned as a firefighter, wildland firefighter, and a commercial airline pilot. When things get really chaotic, interest rates jump to 8%, people are freaking out, right? My heart rate actually goes down. I actually calm down. And here's why, or here's how I calm down. I start observing. Okay, agents are freaking out. Oh, the market's not doing right. What's going to change? I just observe, and I just sit back and I watch and I breathe. And that practice has helped me, because then as soon as you have that space involved, you do some observations, now you may get some clarity on how to act. And the way I act is based on a procedure, right? I just follow a process. I have no idea if it's going to work out, but I know I need to follow those steps. And I think with real estate, there's no real blueprint or steps to take place. You just have to have those frameworks on your own. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh yeah, cool.
Did you lose me on the screen?
So when it gets crazy, you just have to calm down. You just have to observe and just sit back and watch, and then make action, then decide what to do.
Yep. Yep. Love it. All right, dude. So, okay. So you're in 5 months, finally pop your first sale, but then the market, Lehman Brothers collapse, Bear Stearns collapse, things are melting down, but you stay consistent. You stay persistent. You're staying calm. You're showing up each and every day, taking the bus, which I love that, dude. How long did it take before you started building? I mean, we know by 2012, you had good momentum because you wouldn't have been able to start your team otherwise, but how long was it before things really started to synergize and click for you as a single agent?
As a single agent, yeah. So the first year, 1 home, second year, 12 homes.
Okay.
12 homes. And I did realize early that buyers were not the key to my success, because during the recession, buyers didn't want homes. They didn't want them at all. They had no interest in them at all. They're like, why would I buy this? It's going to be worth less tomorrow, right? I'm just going to wait. So I focused on listings. And at the time, listings became more and more available. Inventory was rising. It hasn't happened in today's market, but it certainly can. Expireds started popping up. Cancels were coming up. Bank-owned properties were coming up. And what I started doing direct mail my second year. That was an inflection point. I would identify properties that I felt were more likely to sell or have equity and room to sell, and I would send them letters. And what I did was, it was interesting. I thought about zoning. So I looked up the zoning, and I would look at the zoning in which their property was underutilized. So someone told me about this highest and best use concept. Like, what's the highest and best use? Right. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I get that concept of highest and best use, but how do I use it to make more money? Real estate training doesn't tell you anything about how to make money. So I'm like, okay, well, let me find properties that are not at the highest and best use and write the owner's letters, letting them know that I know what it is. So I'd write you a letter and say, hey, Joshua, it's Nick McLean. I noticed your zoning is zoned this, and it's undervalued and underperforming based on what it could be. Would you like to know what the highest and best use is? Give me a call. And then they would call me, and I'd say, when can we meet? And I would go to their house, and I would do subdivisions, boundary line adjustments, right? I would show them all of the things that they can do. You can do a bed and breakfast, an Airbnb, you could build an apartment complex, you can do all these things. And they would say, well, I don't have the money to do that. And I would go, oh, yeah, of course you don't. That's okay. Some did, some didn't. Most didn't. So I said, but someone out there has the money and they want to do it. Would you consider listing it? And I can market it to all these people. And then you can take all of this extra money and buy something that you already have. So I would simply list their home, sell it, and then buy them something almost exactly the same that is in the highest and best use, right? We love our house. I know you love our house, but you also have 5 acres that is not performing very well. If you took that money and put it in the stock market at the low, it's going to go up. So I would just play that game. And the other thing that I did was interesting is I thought outside the box, in terms of I can get paid other than commissions. So if it took longer than a few hours for me to do the work, because they were like, here's what you can do. Do you want to do it? Yes, we want to do it. Do you want to actually go through the process and you do the lift and haul? Or would you like me to help you? They were like, well, can you help me? I can. It's $50 an hour. And they would sign me up on a retainer. So my second year, I actually made $31,000 in consulting fees. My second year in the industry. Nobody knows that, right? This is probably the second time I've ever said it out loud. I made $31,000 on consulting fees my second year in the industry. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just willing to do it. And so I would go to the planning departments. I would go to the consultants. I would basically general contract to consulting firms to get these entitlements in place, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to get across is like, we can't just be one-sided in terms. I learned this from a mentor, is that if you want to get the listing, you need to figure out a way to increase the value of their property. How can you change it? How can you take one property and turn it into 3 listings? Right. And this might not apply to everyone within the urban environment where, you know, you got a townhome on a 0 lot line in the middle of town, right? You can't do anything with that. But I always like helping my clients find properties and opportunities and change the use, change it, improve it, and then I get multiple listings. Right. Well, the first time I ever got a developer to work with me, I found him a piece of property and he developed it into 38 lots and built 38 homes on it. But the deal up front was, hey, Mr. and Mrs., you know, Mr. Developer, like I'm willing to find you properties off market so you can develop and build homes because that's what you do best. But if I do it, you're going to list them all with me. So part of the deal is you need to factor in the commissions. Don't think I'm going to do all this lift and haul and then I don't get the list side of the business. Yeah. And if you're sitting there wondering, well, how come these agents get all these builder deals? Well, how come the builder uses them? Well, did you ever think maybe they're the ones that found the deal for them? You know what I mean? And so a lot of that has to do with direct response. It's funny today, even today, in the last 2 months, I've spent $40,000 on direct mail. Right? I'm using the same principle. The message might change, but direct mail is something very, very powerful if you have a powerful message.
Yeah. So and I want to circle back to, you know, what led you to start the team, and we'll get on to that. But because you brought up direct mail, what have you found? Because obviously it's been highly successful with you. And most people, when they think of direct mail, they're like, all right, dude, I'm just going to slap out a letter. I'm going to slap out a postcard. I'm going to send it once. Oh, that thing didn't work. You know, everything works. Nothing doesn't. You know, so what have you found through having so much success with direct mail? I'm sure that you've split tested an insane amount of mailers. You know, what are some keys for somebody that wants to get into direct mail? What are some, you know, maybe top things? Okay, make sure that you do this right if you want to have success with direct mail. Maybe here's some things to avoid when it comes to direct mail.
Well, I think first you want to understand direct response marketing. And mail just happens to be one way to reach somebody and make a statement and ask them to respond. Direct response, being direct. Here's the offer. Here's how you respond. Would you agree with that direct response statement? Like, understand direct response. And if you want to get really into it, you can look into Gary Halbert. You can look into Ogilvy. You can look into Frank Kern. You can look into, you know, Dan Kennedy. And that's going to take you down a rabbit hole and find out there's this, you know, Russell Brunson. It's funny, like Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels. All these guys have a mentor, like Socrates and Aristotle and Alexander the Great. They're all like the same. It's like you and I were kind of joking that we all know kind of the same people. It's a small world. Yeah, it is. Big time. So if you do anything in your marketing career right now, and I think as a team leader, broker, owner, and co-founder of Reside, marketing and advertising is the one thing you give up last, not first. I see team leaders do this all the time, even solo agents. They hire a social media marketing manager and they don't even have like an assistant. This is like right out of college. All you're going to get is fancy Canva social media posts that produce nothing. So rule number one is your advertising has to produce results. You have to hold your advertising accountable. If you're sending out letters and not getting a result, it's a problem with your messaging, right? And so here's a framework I would do on my letters. Number one, I have to grab their attention. Same principle on emails, same on any type of advertising. I have to grab attention. Okay. I have to make them an offer. What's the offer? What's in it for them? Now, through the letter, I need to pull them down into the body. I need to retain them and entertain them and train them. Retain them is the same thing as entertainment because you have to retain them with knowledge and training, but it has to sizzle a little bit. The words have to keep them going. The most important word of your letter is the first word. The second most important letter is the second word. And each word has to get the person to want to read the next word, right? So you have to hold these things accountable. And it's funny because I took creative writing in college, and part of the creative writing course was poetry. And what I took away from this course was my professor was like, every word matters. Every single word matters. There's intention to every word in a poem. In marketing, every single word matters. And you must remove all unnecessary words. Remove all unnecessary words. And write the letter at like a 4th or 5th grade level because it's easier to read. Put a word in there that's hard to read, that some people don't understand. They will throw that letter away. This was my problem. I was too smart. I was writing at 11th grade level, right? And people were like, I don't want to read that. See you later. Okay. Now grab their attention, make them an offer, retain them and train them, and then ask them to do something. Oh, even better, tell them to do something. Tell them how to do it. Tell them to do it now. That is a variation of direct response and a variation of the Gary Halbert method. So if you think about these infomercials, it's like, order now and you will get X, right? And if you do it in the next 30 seconds, you're also going to get Y, steak knives. So this is my favorite part, the description on directions. People are really good at following directions. You just have to give really clear directions. People are really good at following directions, everybody. If they're not following your directions, you're either not giving them directions or you're confusing the hell out of them. Pick up the phone now, look at it, dial these numbers, take your finger and push these buttons. As soon as you do, a friendly person on the other end was going to take your credit card number, you're going to give it to them. Like, so you can be very, very specific. So in my letters and my emails, like the call, you can call it a CTA, right? But that's not doing it enough justice. It's like, is your CTA like, hit the reply? When I do emails, I say, click the reply button and I tell them what to say. My best emails, I tell them, reply now and say and write, I'm interested, or send me more information, or your address. Like, I'm very, very clear on what I want. I just want one thing. I don't want like a lot of things. Like, tell me what you're interested in. No. Have you been thinking? No. Are you thinking about it? Let me know. None of that.
Yep. I love it, dude. And yeah, I mean, people go with the grain. They don't go against it. We found that even with things like open houses, like, starting to have banners before they even walk in, retractable banners that tells them exactly what to do. Come inside, sign in, take a look around, fall in love, make an offer, then below that, this home isn't for you. No worries. We can show you others. Then when they go to open
it's right there.
Yeah. Then on the front door, it's, before they open the front door, it's, please come, or, come in, please sign in for security purposes per seller's request. They open the door 3 feet from the door, that other sign, again, that retractable banner. And we were getting 80% plus people to sign with complete accurate information with never having to ask, and like what we just experienced over the last few years. Like, you can see how people just blindly follow instructions, so, I think that's,
It's so true. It's so true. I love my wife to death. She's absolutely amazing. But I shouldn't say, but she's amazing at following directions. She is exceptional at reading every sign there is in public, whether it's like a government sign or like a recommended sign. She's like, what are you doing? The sign says to do this. Didn't you read it? And for us, we're entrepreneurs. We don't really follow the rules. You guys have to understand, our biggest blind spot is thinking people think like us. They don't. Like, we're rebels, baby. Like, remember, I like adventure, even though I'm really good at following a process. Now, get really good at creating a process for you to follow, but also for your clients. What do you want them to do? And lay it out. I love what you said about the open house. That's absolutely brilliant. I write emails that say, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, easy. Step 1, 2, and 3, easy.
Yep. Oh, dude. So then, so things, you're going through the strategies that you ran through. Okay. Things are really starting to pick up. You start your team then in 2012. A question that we get from a lot of those that watch and listen to this podcast is, at what point did you know you were ready to go out there and start a team? I mean, I know that this was something you always wanted to do,
Yes.
but there's a difference between necessity versus want, right?
Okay. Yes. Yes. So I wanted a team. In my heart, I want to be a leader. I just want to be a leader. And part of being a leader is being the person that I need to become to be the best leader in my life that I possibly can be. I know that I'm not that person, but by identifying myself as a leader, I am on pursuit towards that. Leadership is something you pursue and you never obtain. You just get better and better at it and refine the character and the virtues that you need to become. Number one. So I didn't know I was ready for a team. I just knew I had to in order for me to go on that journey of leadership. Period. I had to do it. You will step up. If I can this is the message, everybody. You will step up when you put your name on the line. You put it on the sign. You say you're a team and you're hiring. You will step up. You will. The first time I was inspired to be a leader outside of sports. I was on a fire. I was on a fire in Mazama, Washington, which is north, top, almost to the border, steep country. We're talking like 2,000 foot elevation, but the peaks will be 8,000, like straight up cliffy, shaly, dangerous. Ex-Vietnam helicopter pilots were flying us into the fire because it was so steep and rugged, you couldn't even hike in. You had to be helicoptered in. Right. And my squad leader got sick and he had to go home early. And so my squad boss, there's squad leaders and squad bosses, said, Nick, you're in charge. I wasn't ready. I hadn't done the training at all. Something came over me. I no longer cared about me and me following direction and doing the thing. I started caring about the other 4 people that I was responsible for. And I just remember just endless energy. I had endless energy. My focus was so acute and clear. I couldn't even believe it. I would hike up in front. I'd say, everyone, wait back. I'm going to hike up, make sure it's safe first. Then I'll come back down and report before you go. And I was leading by example. And I was making sure that I would go into danger to save them. And I was like, man, I want that for the rest of my life. And so I didn't know. I mean, in terms of my business, I had saved up enough money so that I could make that leap. I think I had $78,000. And I think, for a lot of people, that might not be the case, but you should start planning for that. When you start a team, you're starting a business. And what businesses do you know of that require no startup costs at all?
Yeah.
Very few. So I think about it. Starting a team is starting a business. It's a different business than your solo production. Completely different. In fact, if I was doing a profit and loss statement and I was in production, I would take my production out of the P&L to see, is my team actually the business that is profitable? And we do this with coaches right now, and people we help at Reside, right? We look at that because when you get into the team, you don't want to have to be stuck in it. You don't want to fund your team for too long. So I had a plan, if that made sense. I didn't know how to do it at all. I also started my team as a brokerage. So I got licensed as a broker from day one. I was never at a franchise. I've never been at EXP, Real, you name it, Remax, Keller Williams, nothing. I've only been independent. That's all I know.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I talk to a lot of people, and I'm not saying do independent at all. This is all I know. But I can tell you my experience. Because I was independent, I couldn't rely on anyone else to create my policy and procedure manual, my code of conduct manual, my mission and my vision and core values, right? The way we greet people. I couldn't just get that and never read it. I had to create it, right? And when you create something like that, when people walk in the door, they can feel the difference. I believe it. So it's kind of funny. I think I've been saying lately, rappers want to be professional athletes and professional athletes want to be rappers.
Yep.
You ever see that? It's kind of funny in our industry today. Teams want to be brokerages and brokerages want to be teams. And they call them hybrids now. It's kind of funny because teams have great margins. If they're well run, they're highly leverageable and there's good margins. And then some brokerages had such low margins. They're like, how can we get a little bit of both?
From your experience, do you think because brokers want to be teams want to be brokers, that hinders them more than helps them if they just stay in their lane and be what they are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's funny because as my brokerage grew and grew and grew, we started bringing on independent contractor brokers. And there was a little bit of friction and rub on who's on what team and the services and things like that. I think you can do it at scale, 100, 200 agents. It's not that big of a deal because at 200 agents, you got probably 2 or 3 teams at your brokerage. You just happen to own one. But when you're, sub 50 agents, it's a tough. Can you bridge that gap and scale it? I think you can, but you got to do it quickly, and you got to really, really recruit and have that mindset to do it. But I think for the people that want to start a team, I didn't have a lead. I didn't have a lead at all. I didn't have a sphere of influence. I didn't have networking. In fact, I opened my brokerage in a new market. I actually moved 50 miles down when I opened my brokerage. I had 0 sales in the MLS when I opened my brokerage in my team. Right? I didn't. And so the amazing thing about real estate is we work on contingency. The pros and cons is we're contingency. We only get paid if it closes. Well, here's the other cool thing. We can hire people that are working on contingency. So we don't have to pay them until they close something. It's a beautiful thing. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Right? And so your job, this is the way I looked at teams. My job was to get somebody that was willing to work for me for free up front for a piece of the back end. They're willing to work for free and get a piece of the back end. What's my obligation? What's my deliverables? My deliverables is I'm going to do everything in my power to train you so that you can get something on the back end. I focused on the training aspect first versus the lead aspect. Leads was something that was part of the process, but not what was given. And that's not the reason you joined. But you also have to have a CRM. You know this stuff. You know this, and people listen to this. You also had to have a CRM that everyone was working within. Everyone's working the same systems, the same process, using the same terminology, the standardization. So I think their standards, right, are really important on teams. But I think teams don't focus enough on standardization. If you only focus on standards, you're only going to be top down, make more calls. We have high standards, do more, work harder. When oftentimes they just need better standardization, a clear direction. And standardization in the airline industry, like I'm near SeaTac Airport. I just flew out of SeaTac. Do you know how many planes fly out of SeaTac every day? Or down in Phoenix? Hundreds, thousands. Right? You know how many radio stations everyone talks on? 1. How do people not talk over each other? Oh, because they've been trained on standardized language. They use the exact same words. There is 0 confusion. 0, near 0. Does that make sense? So as a team, if you want to get more done, increase the capacity, standardize your language. And we call it scripts on the phone, right? But it's also how we greet each other, how we talk to each other, how we hand off a lead, right? And that goes back to your marketing piece. These things help me in life, right? Remove all unnecessary words. A good way to get your license taken away is get on the radio at SeaTac Airport and just start talking. And and I got a question and blah. No, that's not how it works, right? There's formats. We have formats we have to use. So little pieces of information that have served me really well, I think about all the time.
Yeah, dude. So, in from your previous training, being an airline pilot, and you mentioned earlier that, okay, you train your agents like airline pilots, right? Going through that, and having insane amounts of conversation with team leaders and broker owners. And there's a lot of different bottlenecks, but the vast majority that I see that prohibit them from scaling. Sometimes it's a strategy thing, but usually, dude, it's a process and system thing.
Yeah.
When it comes to that internally. So when we start unpacking this for that standardization, for making sure that you have those right processes. So everybody is, you've got your internal operations manual, everybody's speaking the same language, everybody knows how to operate, has the resources to go out there and access, and from what I've heard about you, man, like you've got these things absolutely dialed in. So, kind of walk us through what that looks like and maybe some examples to give our listeners an idea of, what a, I guess, highly dialed in process, based business.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting subject because when people hear systems, they often think complex. And the greatest systems are complex, but they're never complicated. There's a big difference between complex and complicated. Okay, let me break this down a little bit. A great complex system is a series of simple steps combined. Let me say that again. The greatest complex system, a dialed in system that's very complex, is just a series of very simple steps. It's simple. Okay? Very, very simple. That in a logical order give a predictable outcome. Not always. In real estate, there's some unknowns. So there's a book, Antul Gawande, pronunciation is beyond me. Antul Gawande, Gwande, the Checklist Manifesto.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, the Checklist Manifesto. And it's a very fascinating book. And it sounds like you've read it or heard of it. And here's the takeaway from this book. He went into hospitals across North America and the world. And there were some hospitals in which if you were to go in for surgery, you were more likely to die of the surgery than for the reason you went in for surgery. Like, that's scary, everybody. Right? Oh, you want a knee replacement? Well, you're more likely to die from having the knee replacement than the knee replacement. Oh, maybe I don't. Okay, so here's the thing. Well, why is that? Well, here's what they found. Infections. Complications in the surgery, namely infections, bacteria. Bacteria would get in there and they would be infected and they would cause complications. And then, people obviously, they need a surgery aren't that healthy unless it's an elective, right? I don't want to get into health. I'm not interested in it. So he created a checklist, if you remember this. That checklist is a system that everyone agrees to follow prior to a surgery. Step 1, wash your hands. That saved countless lives. Countless. That is one of the greatest systems I've ever heard of in my life. Does it matter what's next? Not really. Because what's next doesn't matter if you didn't wash your hands. It's like, so it's so interesting. It's like we can have complex systems and be really proud of them. Really complicated. I was at a conference the other day and someone was so proud of their 586-step onboarding process. And I'm like, okay. All right. Oh man, how often are you successful at completing all 586 steps? Because I think a system has to be completed. If you have a system in place and it's not being completed, it is not a system. Right? A landing checklist that's not completed doesn't end in a safe landing. Like, you have to start it and you have to finish it. So up until you can prove to me you can finish it, don't add another step. So put the most important things on there and that's it, and move on. And then we can get better and better and better and better. Does that make sense a little bit? It's like the other way I could help people build a system, and I wrote out policies. I'm a little fanatic. Like, I believe I can do anything for 30 days straight, right? So I always do 30 days. And it's not for habit forming. It's just like, okay, I don't want to have to think that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I'm doing something. I just like to say every day. It's easy for me. And I don't exclude weekends, right? So I had a challenge for myself. I would write a procedure every day, every single morning. I'd write a new procedure, right? And it's easy in terms of this framework. And there was an app that came out, IFTTT. Yeah. If this, then that. It's so simple, right? So if I have a lead procedure, like I want to get my agents to convert leads at a higher level. Okay, well, what's our lead procedure, right? Lead comes in. Okay. If this happens, a lead comes in, then what? What do I want you to do? All right. I want you to call it. Okay, great. All right. If the person answers it, what do I want you to say? You say this. Okay. If the person doesn't answer it, then I want you to do this. And you just go IFTT all the way down until you feel like it's a level in which it's going to move the needle and it can be completed. Don't forget that part. Can it be completed? I was just talking to someone on the phone, before this, and she was overwhelmed because of micromanaging. She's like, I'm having to micromanage all my agents. There's just so many variables and anxiety and stress and overwhelm. She was burned out. I go, yes, because you're micromanaging. You're managing way too many things. Way too many things. What's the one thing in that process you can manage, that you can micromanage, that's going to tell you about everything else? Right? Like back to the surgery thing. Like, did you fill out your post-surgery form and make notes in the hospital CRM? You don't think a hospital has a CRM? Did you make notes for the patient's records? Is that important? If you didn't wash your hands, no, it's not. So if I was in charge of that hospital and that surgeon, and I was calling them up and doing an AAR, an after action review, I'd say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Surgeon, I'm curious. Did you wash your hands? Yes. Oh, great. Well, that tells me a lot about that. Did you break it? Did you finish the checklist? Yes, we finished the checklist. So obviously it tells me you took notes, right? So it's logical because I know the steps and we're talking the same language. It's when there's so many like random ways to do things. I want you to get in the CRM and make notes. Well, what notes? I don't care about notes necessarily.
Yeah. Yep. Love it, man. So, all right. So then if we get into, because you guys are producing at a high level, the market has obviously changed. One of the biggest questions that, I'm getting asked right now from the podcast from a lot of people, dude, because they got so used to this last decade of probably one of the easiest times where it's like, you could kind of show up, and if you kind of showed up, deals will fall in your lap, and now things are a little bit different. With the overall competitive landscape. You got 1.6 million realtors, about 800,000 or less active listings, transaction volume's way down, cost of capital's way up. What are things that you guys are doing right now to go out there and pivot and shift and adapt and ensure that you aren't experiencing this contraction that the rest of the market is?
Well, we can dive into a couple different areas. When COVID hit, we all have stories, but we obviously were shut down, and the forecasts were grim, and we didn't know how long we were going to be in our house. And what I realized is the goal changed. The goal wasn't necessarily to increase. This is before it went pandemic level awesomeness, right? This is like we're stuck and there's zero sales going on, zero showings, zero listing appointments, zero everything. We're calling your marketing agencies and renegotiating contracts left or right. The goal changed. And the goal was no longer increase my sales from 486 to 512. I think we had a goal of 800 sales that year. The goal was survival. It was, we are going to survive based on attrition. Our competition is going to struggle far greater than we are. And on the other end, we are going to be ahead. And I don't think it's dire now. Not at all. Not at all. But I think that mindset is really interesting. Is the goal is to survive tomorrow or today so you can have tomorrow. Because the thinning of the realtor herd or the agent herd is coming. And it may change, but I'm thinking if I can be profitable and maintain and even grow, wow, per agent productivity is going to go through the roof because there's less agents. Now, here's the thing. The market's been so good the last 3 years, but per agent productivity went down. Why? Well, transactions went down and agent count was super high. There's going to be a time in the future where your team is going to be doing 24 deals per agent each, like it used to be. That's how it was when I started. The rule of thumb was 24 deals per agent. Now it's 8. I'm looking at P&Ls across teams across the country. Like, yeah, you might have someone doing 40, but you got a lot of agents doing 0 and 1 on your team. And that was never acceptable before.
Right.
It was acceptable as an independent agent, but not at a team agent level. So what am I doing that is working? One, direct mail, specifically to homeowners with equity. 50% I want to say 51% of homeowners in the United States, shockingly, have no mortgage. That's crazy. Like, there's half the homes in your market probably are free and clear. Meaning, if they sold their home and they bought something else, it doesn't matter what interest rates there are. Not at all. It doesn't matter. And if they're downsizing, it's even a better win. So you're saying I sell my home for $600 and I clear $550 and I buy a home for $350 and I keep $200 and I can put it in a treasury bond or online marketplace for 5%. That sounds like a good idea, right? So here's what I do. I go non-owner occupied, owned your home since 2012 or older, owner occupied, 2012 or older, because they're sitting on just a crazy amount of wealth and equity. Because even if prices have gone down, they haven't gone down that much. And in fact, if they've gone down, that's even more of a reason for them to sell it now, so it doesn't go down more. Loss aversion kicks in. So if you're in a marketplace and it's slightly going down, even better, right? And so that's working really well. And the same messaging works. So if I'm emailing my database, here's what I did. I was spending about $26,000 a month on Zillow when interest rates were 3%, and in perspective. And I took it down to $2,000. So I dropped it considerably, right, to the minimums. And then I went to my database and I emailed. Okay. Last year, I emailed my database, and this is all leads, not just past clients, all leads, 265 times. 265 times. Now, Gary Keller would tell you to do it 33 times, right? Back in, I did it 265 times, 5 times a day, five or 6 times a week. I emailed my database. For the first 30 days, I didn't do one call to action, not one link, not one ask, nothing. It was like the Gary V left. I was jabbing him for 30 days straight, man. Here's what's crazy thing that happened. My unsubscribes were virtually nothing, and my open rates increased. You would think if you emailed someone 30 days in a row, your unsubscribes and your open rates would go down. No, they went up because they were looking forward to the next one and the next one and next one. And then they gave me permission. I've been working that database ever since. In the last 12 months, just my email, 71 transactions have been correlated to my database. For me just saying, hey, blah, 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 reply with your address if you want to know what it's worth. And the other change I made was I never talked to a buyer like a buyer by email or by marketing. I talk to them like they own a home, right? Because I thought about this. This is a huge mistake I've had over the years, is like treating buyers like buyers. Nobody wants to be a buyer. Their goal is to own a home. They watch Home and Garden Network to know what it's like to own a home. Well, and the experience of buying, but they also want to, people that don't own homes are studying how to improve the value of their home. Like, people that don't own homes are watching flipping shows on how to improve the value of a home. So why don't I just start talking to all the buyers like they own a home? They eat it up. They open it, they read it, they save it. I got people saving my emails, right? Like, it's crazy. And so I've really pivoted to that because it's low cost, no cost, and it's just me, and it refines my writing skills. And really that practice of daily writing has led me to writing my book. That's why I wrote my book. So I was like, damn, I'm writing so much. What if I just wrote a book, right, and did it? And so those are some things we're doing. We're also working on in a team level. I listen to recorded phone calls. So just really squeezing every last juice out of the lemon and ending conversations in a fashion that leads to the next step. And I think we've gone deeper into pay-per-click. It depends on your marketing, but you go into Google and intention-based and long tail keywords, keywords that show more intent have really worked for us.
Yeah. So with those emails, all right. So to increase open rates, when you're sending 5 a week on average, I mean, they've got to be things of value, I'm assuming. Yeah, right. Not spammy, they're things of value that people want to read. With that, are these, short form, long form, mid, combo? Like what are some examples of?
Yeah, I say 200 to 500 words is roughly where they're at. And then and I don't have a formula. I just have flow, I just have flow. I have a feeling, right? Yep. But every once in a while, it'll be a sharp, conversion email where I'm making an ask. There's going to be an ask here, and the ask is going to be click the link, reply to the email, right? The fewer emails you send out with fewer links and JPEGs, the better. These are pure text. They look like I wrote them to you. When I'm writing an email to 36,000 people, it's, first name, template, comma, space. And I write it like I'm talking to one person. I had a real estate radio show. You've probably done radio and studied radio. I did a radio show for 4 years, 1 a week for 4 years. And they would consult you on this. I hired a consultant for this, right? Number one, talk slower. Talk a lot slower. And that's a good training point for your agents on the phone, is just talk slow and pause in between your words. It's going to increase your conversion rate. It's going to make the conversation go a little bit longer, and you're going to have more control. It's really, really good. So talk slower, and listen to like Dave Ramsey or I don't know who's popular on the radio anymore. I know everyone here's going, I don't listen to the radio. I listen to podcasts. Awesome. Listen to a really good somebody on podcast. Now, the second thing was talk to one person. Talk to one person. It's very interesting when you write as though you're writing to one person versus everyone. When you start writing to everyone, you sound like it. Like whether you're looking to buy, sell, trade, do, blah, blah, blah. You're like, if you own a single family or a condo or land, or you're thinking about moving here, moving it. No, now you're talking to nobody, and they know it. So I will talk to them as specific as possible. Like I could use an analogy. I could say like, Adam, interest rates are at 8.1%. And, if, talking to a plumber the other day, that plumber comes home and he only makes so much money and he, blah, 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 blah. I might give him a story. It's very specific. And so that's how I was able to get the open rates up. Now, the subject line is really, really important. So you start working. I write the email first, then the subject line second, typically. And it's usually a cliffhanger. Here's what I found works, or one secret that was revealed to me the other day, or what I think is going to happen in the future. Right. I was shocked to find out, right. ... Or a monthly market update, is 12 of the 265. Your home report ... This is a great one, by the way. And I learned this from Zillow. Is if you sign up for a Zestimate once a month, they send you an email that says your home report, your September home report. Right? Do this. Go your October 23 home report ... Open it up. Dear blank, blah, blah, blah. Here's your updated home report. Click the link that takes them to your home value site. Right. And I learned this from like tech companies. There was a time where I owned a real estate website tech company, IDX. I don't know why I did it. It was a crazy idea. Right. You're smiling because you probably are into software at some point. Yeah, here's a great way to lose $1 million, right? Is to buy a tech company. So anyways, we had 1,200 real estate website companies across North America, right? And I lost my train of thought on that one. But what was I saying about that?
You're talking about what you learned from Zillow with the subject line, and then you're talking about you learned this from tech companies.
Oh yeah. Well, with the Zillow thing, the home value report, this is what I learned from tech companies. You know what what they track most, what they care about most? Daily active users. Like if Zillow wants to increase ad spend and revenue, they increase traffic first. And then they sell the traffic to the agents. So everyone here that has a real estate website, your job is to get the people that have already been to your site back to the site. Now you could hire someone to do retargeting ads and spend more money to get there, or you can take their email and get them to go back. Zillow does this every time their traffic goes down. They email everybody. I promise you that. Because they know it's cheap and easy and it makes them a lot of money, right? Trust me, they want more traffic. They just email everybody. And so what do you email them? Email them what they want. Well, I like sending them a home value report because that tells me they own a home. Right, here's your home value report. Click the link to find out. The system automatically updates it for me, so it's easy. It's great, right? You could follow that up with a conversion ad to get a tour of the house. But then again, you got to send out property, a call to action to get them to go to the site to search for homes. Increase your daily active users. That's all I got to say.
Yep. Love it, dude. All right. So then, okay, you're writing these emails. You learn that, okay, hey man, maybe I'm good at writing. I'm enjoying writing. I'm getting the flow of writing. Yeah. It leads you to writing this book, and man, I think the book release was just recent, within the last month or two, correct?
Yeah, it was probably 3 months ago. I don't remember the exact date, but July 1st, I think is a proper release date.
Yep. And you got $1 Million Agent.
$1 Million Agent, the proven playbook to build a real estate empire. The Fours by Jon Cheplak, and it was in the top real estate sales books, new releases. And I don't know where it's at now, but it's still selling copies every single day. So it was really great. So it's on Amazon only. There's an Audible, so you can listen to it, or you can get the Kindle.
Yep. So then, who is this book really for? Is it for, okay, if I'm an individual agent, I want to go out there and make $1 million, or is it for those that are wanting to build teams, build brokerages?
It's really for a team.
Everybody?
It's really the playbook for the team. I think I wrote it so that it would be on your desk. I wrote it so that it would be something you grab arm length away for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, you're going to reference it. It's not a book to devour. It's a book to work through. The tried and true how to win friends and influence people. It's like one principle a day and put it into action. Every single chapter has actionable items and to-do lists, a procedure. Like, it's literally a book that's a procedure that builds you a real estate team. Now, if you're a solo agent, doesn't mean you don't build a team. You need a lending partner. You need third parties involved. You need home court advantage, escrow, title, lawyers. You need a team, executives, things like that. And it also touches on, obviously marketing, risk reversals, guarantees, how to make money, because that was really, really important to me. So that's why I wrote the book. And it's funny because one of my friends is Morgan Housel. He wrote the book called The Psychology of Money. Brilliant book, 3 million copies sold. And the reason I bring him up is he inspired me to write a book, because if you want to learn to fly, it's easy. Go to an airport. You're going to learn, just hang around people that are already flying. They're going to just take you up. If you want to learn listings, find someone that's really good at listings, and they're just going to take you, and you're just going to start listing, right? You want to get good at marketing, get in the right mastermind group. You understand this, right? GSD Mode is basically this way for people you want to get better at business. You just go there, just show up, and you're just going to happen. And so when I was hanging out with Morgan once a week by Zoom, is I'm hanging out with an author. I'm going to write a book. It just happens, man. It's kind of a cool story that I wanted to share with you guys. I never thought about it until I just started hanging out with an author, and all his lessons had to do with writing. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess if I'm going to get better, I got to do that. So that's who the book's for. Any real estate agent, I've always said, people outside the industry have bought it for sure, but definitely for the agent that wants to be a leader.
Yep. Love it, dude. So then circling back to your team, I know we're going long on time, but what would you say as you look back here? Because you've got about 11 years now of directly growing I know it's under a brokerage, but team model. What would have been some of the biggest mistakes that you made that you would tell anybody that's wanting to build a successful team? Make sure to avoid these.
Well, I don't ever buy a used U-Haul
and wrap it for a moving truck.
U-Hauls for like $5,000. So we're probably like 10 now. I bought a used U-Haul for $5,000, and on its way to get wrapped for $7,000, the engine blew up. I drove it 200 miles and it blew up. Okay, now that's not a very practical example. You're going to lose everybody. Everyone you hire eventually is going to leave you. Now, there's some people in my company have been there for day one, but that my mindset is like, this isn't necessarily forever. This is a business. And I need to obviously do what I can to keep them, but I have to stay true to the business and the profitability. A lot of teams over time, they make changes to their comp plan over time, and they get Frankenstein comp plan. Everyone's on different deals. You didn't plan on it, but you wanted to retain, right? And next thing you know, you got a lot of restructuring to do, number one. Number two is when they leave you or you let them go, one of the two. I don't know any other option. Do it the right way. Do it the right way. My early competitive deals, I remember early on, oh, you're going to leave me? Really? Okay. I remember one person, and I regret it. I looked her in the eye and I said, you know what you are now? And she goes, no. I go, the competition. She goes, really? I go, yeah, the competition. She's been with me 2.5 years. This is how I treated her on the way out. Competition. And I go, you know what I do with the competition? She's like, what? I crush them. That was terrible. It was such a terrible way to leave. 2 years later, I saw her walking down the street. I did a U-turn, got out of my car, and went to her and I apologized because I realized the pain that I did. And I didn't need to do that. That was my ego. That was me being hurt, lashing out, right? So just treat them right. They may not have, and they're going to steal your leads. They're going to take your leads. They're going to call them, right? Take the high road. Doesn't mean you have to hire them again. And I know like Frank Leo in Toronto, he doesn't, he had a policy for a while. He doesn't take anyone back ever. You leave, you don't come back. Well, it's a top 5 economy in the world, right? There's a lot of agents. Okay, number one. Number two, like there's some people that have left and they come back and they're such a great contributors to the team. And so play the long game. Always, when you become a team leader and a broker owner, you're not playing the short game anymore. You're not playing let's get a lead and convert it as fast as possible game. You're playing how do I get people to repeat process and convert at a high level for a long period of time? You play the lifetime value, the true lifetime value game. You always drove me crazy that when you sell a home to someone, statistically, they don't buy again for 7 years and then 4 years. And so then you ask them for referrals. Your agents, like, no, this is the monthly, the recurring revenue model, everybody. And the difference between transactions that happen a long time versus transactions that happen every single month is the value changes. The recurring revenue model, I just learned this from my brother-in-law that's in tech, Microsoft Tech. He said the recurring revenue model, you're willing to spend more upfront to retain them long-term. You give them way more value upfront. So understand that. Your real estate agents, you're supposed to give them way more upfront, way more training, way more attention, way more love, way more everything. So they succeed, because if they do, your lifetime value, the average agent on my team is like 4.5 years, right? Run the numbers. I've ran the numbers. That's 26,000 first year, 52,000 second year, 76,000 third year, 76,000 fourth year. Add that up. It's worth over $200,000 in 4 years. Like, yeah, I think up front, I can give them a lot of attention, resources, leads, nurturing, mentorship, right? Like, of course it's up front. And here's the other thing is like, you bring on 10 and 6 aren't going to make it past your probation period. Like, I didn't know that at first. I wanted everybody to succeed, like over hell or high water, And the biggest mistake one of the biggest mistakes I had as a team leader was wanting it more than them. Yeah. Putting my goal on their goal. Now we have standards, but it's like, be careful. They're joining you because they don't want to be you. I was always worried early on. I was like, well, I can't give them too much because they'll become me and start their own company. Like, no, give it all away. They don't want to be you. Yeah. And in my small town of 100,000 people, there's probably 12 agencies in town, real agencies. 4 of them are somehow were trained with me. Like, I mentored them. And you might be thinking, the early Nick would have been so pissed. But now I'm like, that's cool. That's super cool. You know what I mean? That's me being a leader. When you read John Maxwell's Leaders Creating Leaders, he didn't tell you those leaders are going to be at different companies.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. And that's the good part, right? Like, I think with you and what you've done, how many leaders that are no longer in your system have gone and do great things. You're proud of them, and they eventually come back, or a deal comes up, or a JV comes up, or an opportunity comes up, and you're like, wow, glad I kept that relationship intact.
Yep. 100%, man. So then, again, I know we're going long on time, so just a couple last questions for you. Had Suneet on recently, but I didn't know that he was part of Reside until after our conversation. Then, we started having a conversation about it. So, this is really the first time that our audience has heard about Reside. I know that you're a co-founder of it. Like, what is Reside? And can you just give us a little bit of information about that in case anybody that's watching or listening has some interest in having a further conversation with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Reside platform was created by Suneet Agarwal, who was the #1 team in California for a couple of years. Preston Guyton, who's a wizard at PPC, SEO, building websites. He runs Cheplak Digital, and he also built Palms Realty. From 2001 till now, they did 1,400 homes in 2 years. I've never seen a run like that. 106 agents, and then Jon Cheplak and myself. And so it's a platform for which teams, aspiring teams and brokerages can align with and build upon. And they're going to build upon this platform with technology. We all use the same technology so that when we are consulting them and advising them and helping them grow, everyone in the community is using the same thing. Remember, I was talking about same language, same procedures. We can do same trade secrets. You go to these masterminds or wherever, and everyone's using something else. Okay. We also provide onboarding training. So we train every single agent that joins their team for 6 weeks. So we help onboard it, because a lot of team leaders are like, man, I don't know what to train. What's the training protocol? Like, it sounds like Nick has it down. Well, okay, great. I'll do it for you for 6 weeks. I don't train your agents on your state contracts or your province contracts, because we have Canadian clients, but I'm certainly going to get them into production. I guarantee you this, at the end of 6 weeks, you'll know whether or not they're going to be productive. I know it, right? Yeah, I teach them, I don't teach them French, Spanish, or German, but I teach them sales. And I think that's what you want to have at the end of 6 weeks. And then we do their weekly agent trainings and financial reporting so that people can make data-driven decisions. It's kind of like if you think about like a McKinsey & Company or a Boston Consulting, like a high-level enterprise consultant, third-party consultant, to come in here and do some of the lift and haul, not just do coaching, but some of the lift and haul. I think that's where coaching fell short, is like, for 20 minutes, I would tell you what you need to do, and you would need to go do it. And if you didn't do it, I'd just tell you again, and you're going to pay me no matter what. Reside's like, hey, we have the playbook and we have the community, and we're going to do some of the lift for you. So it replaces the need for a full-time director of training, where we operate as an executive board of directors for you. We onboard your agents, and we provide you technology to build your team, and help you avoid, things that we chase that don't cost money. Most of the people that have joined Reside, we actually get rid of more things that they were paying for and give them the right things. So if they want to find out more, it's resideplatform.com, and they can schedule, reach out to us. We'd happy to reach you.
Perfect. Awesome, man. All right. So last question for you, dude. All right. So if Nick today, knowing everything that you've learned now from this journey since 2008, if you could go back, knowing everything you know now today, and have a conversation with your younger self and give yourself a couple pieces of advice that you feel would have really just fast forwarded the success trajectory that you're on right now, what would those couple pieces of advice look like?
If I went back in time, at what point in my career?
You can insert whether it's 2008, whether it's 2012, but you're sitting on a park bench with yourself today and your younger self, and you can give yourself a couple pieces of advice.
Yeah, number one, I started my team in 2012, and I would tell myself I would give myself permission to stop drinking. And I would give every piece of advice that I've learned from being sober. So it's been 6.5 years, and it's top 5 decision of my life outside of getting married, having kids, loving my parents and different things like that, starting my team. Without a doubt. It is the one decision that has just changed everything for me. Because as a real estate leader, the more I worked, the more I would supplement with alcohol at night to calm down. Right. And it was wearing on me, and I was looking older and all this other things. The other thing I would do too is I would let myself know that I am an athlete, that my best days are ahead, not behind me, and to get ruthlessly committed to my health and fitness, and hire a fitness coach immediately. Right. I mean, those are the two things. And it's funny because it's personal. These two things, these personal decisions have really catapulted my life personally and professionally. I mean, that goes to what happened was I hired this around the same time I decided I quit drinking, is stop forever. I hired a coach, a mountain biking coach. And I was just a casual rider. I'd ride like 3 miles. Like I would ride a townie bike. A townie bike's like a cruiser, right? And bar hop. That's the extent of my mountain bike riding. And I decided to I found out that in my town was a mountain bike coach of the U.S. national team. The U.S. cycling team coach lived here. I called him up and said, would you train me? And he said, yeah, that's me. And so I hired him as my coach. And he's been my coach ever since, Jason Jablonski. He's my mountain biking coach, right? And I was just like, from that day, I started calling myself a professional mountain bike rider. I am a professional mountain bike rider. I was 220 pounds, right? I don't know if you've ever seen a professional cyclist, probably in Arizona. They're tiny, they're thin, right? And they're fit. But I had that mindset that, like, no, to be a professional, you have to start now. Someone doesn't award you professionalism. You start now, and then you work yourself into it. So that journey has just been absolutely phenomenal. I've done a 100-mile mountain bike race in Bend, Oregon. It's called the High Cascades. Took me 10 hours. Unbelievable. I've done things that is unbelievable. And so part of that journey as a mountain bike racer was becoming an endurance person, someone that can just endure and go and find that energy. So those are my 2 pieces of advice for my younger self.
Yeah, dude. And those are vastly different than we usually get on here, because usually it's about something about business, right? Get over fear of rejection sooner, or, like whatever it may be. How have those things, because I'm not an endurance athlete, but I am very passionate about health and fitness and take that very seriously. And like you, man, I abused alcohol for a long period of my life, and have been sober now for years. And but what kind of impact what has that done for you, and just overall quality of life, business? Like how is this, changed the game? Because it's things that just are never really freaking talked about, at least in the business world.
So it's crazy to me how much extra time I have. I have so much extra time by not drinking. I require less sleep to be 100% refreshed. During the day, my energy level doesn't go down at all. Now, this is a process. It is a journey. And there's some deep work psychologically you will go through. Trust me. But I can tell you a story that I just shared with someone the other day, is that my father right now is 72 and he is in hospice. And for the longest time, my father was an extreme introvert, meaning he didn't talk out loud. He wasn't like mute, but he just never talked. He certainly never said, "I love you," right? I'm not uncommon. This is an uncommon father-son relationship. But because he never verbally showed it or even physically showed love, I sought it big time. And the way I got his attention is through achievement, right? At least that's what I thought. And so I struggled with this really, really deeply for a long time, and I didn't know it. It was like in my shadow. And then when I stopped drinking, it came forward. Right around the time my dad started developing dementia. And it gave me the courage to go to him and me be the one to open that door, to give him love and attention and verbalize, "I love you." Changed my life forever. The relationships you will build, it will be profound, the impact you make. You have to be aware to do that. I was teaching somebody Stoicism, and Marcus Aurelius, Ryan Holiday has that book, the impediment to action is the way, like the obstacle's the way, so to speak, right? And so the obstacle I had with my father was that he never gave me attention and love. So I would always sought that. Well, the way for me to overcome that is, that's the obstacle. I need to go and do it. Right? That's on the sobriety side. On the health and wellness side, everyone here is capable of unreal physical accomplishments and endurance. Unreal. I never thought I was a good runner or an endurance athlete. I thought you were either good at it or you weren't. You were born or not. Your body will adapt to whatever you put it under. It will adapt. It's going to be slow, but it doesn't have to be painful. Okay, it doesn't have to be painful. In fact, if you want to get better at something, the majority of the time will be enjoyable. So when I ride my bike, cycling, if I want to get better, here's what I do. I don't do more pain, more gain. This is a huge misnomer when it comes to cycling or running or endurance. Now, maybe for HIIT or CrossFit or something like that, you got to get in, get out, lactic threshold, right? You're going to really crush it. Maybe bodybuilding, you want to build adaptations to your muscles, right? That's different. But if you want to have adaptations for longevity or like long periods of time, doing endurance for long periods of time, you have to be in what is called zone 2, like you can talk. And the more you do that, the better you are. So I started studying this, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, I did a 100-mile mountain bike race, not a ride, a race. Like, mountain bikes have knobby tires. It's not like riding on the road for 100 miles, dude. It's incredible. So that shows up in your life every single day when it comes to adversity and hard work. You're like, oh, this is nothing.
Yeah. Love it, man. Powerful.
And the other thing too, I know we got to go, but
no, you're good. I got plenty of time. I just want to respect yours.
But you cannot change other people. It's too hard. That's way too hard. It's way too hard to oh man, I'd be better if I remember, man, if my wife stopped drinking, it'd be easier for me to stop drinking. Oh, if they would change, I would change. If they wouldn't invite me over to football games all the time, it'd be a lot easier. You know what I mean? Like it was always like someone else needs to change for me to change. No. The inner work is you need to change. And then guess what happens? Not all of them will change. Some will. Some will. And it's wild. And I don't take credit for anyone changing at all. But people will start changing around you and making really good choices. And you're like, that's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. If you want to make better choices for yourself, hang around people that make good choices, because those good choices affect you. You know, that's why the 5 most important people you hang around with, right? That's because they're making choices that are impacting you. So I thought about that a little bit recently, and it's like, wow, that's really cool to think about that. You know, you just stay on your path, and people are going to come or they're not. But I've seen some things in my life that I never thought I'd see. And, you know, if you look at my team 8 years ago, we used to have sales contests, which involved happy hours and going to Vegas. Well, guess what? We all like to drink. And as soon as I started mountain bike riding and posting that online, guess what? All my agents now, they have green drink in the office. They go mountain biking and running, and they hike in the morning, and they go to yoga, and they bring in like green drinks and healthy foods, and they talk about vitamins and stuff. That's my team now. There was no selection process or interview process that could select for that. It was pure what I put out there myself online attracted it. It did. I remember there was this agent called me up, and he's 57 years old. He goes, Nick, I've been in real estate for 31 years and I want to join your team. I go, what? Why would you want to do that? He goes, man, I love to ride bikes. I love to cycle. I used to do triathlons when I was in my early 30s and late 20s, and I'm ready to do it again. Right? Like I was not attracted to that. I was not an attractive character before. I mean, my avatar became the real me. Right? Thank you for allowing me to take long-winded answers today on the podcast, man. It's been an honor. I know you did and everything.
Yeah, no, dude, it's been an honor having you on, man. This has been a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again for sure, man. And truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here. And those that are watching and listening, again, resideplatform.com. Did I get that right?
Yep. Reside.
Amazon.
IDE.
Yep. And then we got Amazon for the book, $1 Million Agent. Nick McLean is the author on Amazon. Anywhere else that we should make sure that they have awareness if they want to get in touch with you?
Follow me on. You find me on Instagram. You know, hashtag Nick McLean RE. Really focusing on that platform. I'm always on Facebook, but you know, it's tough. It's tough these days.
Yeah. Hell yeah. All right, you guys. Well, those watching, listening, as always, we truly appreciate you. Truly appreciate your support. Keep crushing it. Keep kicking ass, and we will see you next time. Peace.